excuse me for a moment while I go grab those. We had two proposals from our last meeting, one from Baker Tilly, one from Johnson Block. Mr. Bansky, you wanted to hold off on this until you researched another firm, and I think you've indicated that they were not interested in participating in the town of Waukesha.
That's correct.
Are we prepared to move forward with either of these two firms?
I have a question for Mr. Macy, Attorney Macy, and I'll preface it by telling you I'm prepared for the possibility you might rule my question out of order.
Thank you.
That said, I mean, this agenda item refers to financial auditor for 2013 financials. My question is just in quick passing. I think it's common knowledge that our 2012 audit was not completed in its entirety. Cannot discuss that issue. I have my own sense of anxiety about that, but my question is relevant to or pertaining to us looking at a financial auditor for the 2013 financials. Do you have any advice or recommendation to give to us as to whether it might be in the town's interests to have a separate or same auditors for the 2012 or 2013 financials? And if that's an inappropriate question, so tell me.
Well, I don't know that the question is inappropriate. I don't know, I can only answer it a certain way, you know. And I think the citizen comment was a well-made comment, but each year does stand on its own. And I'm not an accountant, but what I do know, and some of you may know this better than I, that whoever is going to do the 13 probably can't complete the 13 until it's determined whether the 12 is done. Because I think they start with the numbers of 12. If I'm not mistaken, in order to do 13, they got to have the data from 12. Now, they may say they have enough data, albeit there's a argument that the 12 is not complete. I believe that that's being researched, you know. No further action is being taken. No one's been hired to do anything more on 12, as I understand the situation. Further, it's my understanding that there's going to be looked at as to whether, you know, and maybe the person who hires the 13 will be able to finish that question as to whether 12 is done or not. But 13 will stand on its own, okay? They either say, we don't have a good starting number, or we can't verify the starting number, or we're going to use this starting number, and then we went ahead with the data as it was presented to us. But we have many communities who switch from year to year for different reasons, as you're aware, and they still have to use whatever data they had from the predecessors. Does that answer your question?
It does, and I thank you, but then it prompts another question, which really isn't for you, but it's more for the other members of the board. If we accept what Attorney Macy has said, that it might be quite true that whoever we retain to do the 2013 audit may not be able to make much forward progress or complete that exercise until we clean up the residuals of the 2012 audit. Then I guess I simply pose the question, let me back up for a real quick minute. We are required and mandated by state law and our own ordinances to have an annual audit. I believe that's an accurate statement. And assuming that is, then isn't this board really almost duty bound to get on with the show, to retain an auditor to go through the 2012 financials so we can get a clean audit? Isn't that a higher priority than hiring a financial auditor for the 2013 financials? And I offer that as a question to my fellow board members.
Question I've got is, the way I understand it, most of the 2012 is done, except for what I understand, the signing, I don't know. But I would like advice on, as far as, is that true that it is done except for the signing? How do we get around that, so we can get it signed by somebody, so we can get it finished since we paid for it, instead of spending more tax money on another audit for 2012?
Well, it's not an issue of signing. What it is an issue of the auditor would not provide an opinion of the financial status of the town of Waukesha.
And I don't think we can get very far deep into the weeds on that issue tonight, because that's not on the agenda. That's my opinion. I'm not running the meeting or whatever. I don't think we can go very far there. My question still remains for 4 fellow board members. Isn't our priority, our higher duty at this point in time, is to move to bring closure and resolution to the 2012 financials and the 2012 audit? Isn't that a higher priority than embarking or proceeding on the 2013 financials or audits, which we probably won't be able to complete anyway?
Attorney Macy, can we even be talking about 2012, since we've specifically talked about 2013 financials on this agenda?
The question of whether you can talk about it, I believe you can talk about the past history and trying to determine what you're going to do with this action item. You can't act on anything for the 2012s because that's not been noted. But I certainly think you can talk about the auditor we used in 2010 was so-and-so, and no, they did a great job, and the auditor we did in 2011 was so. I mean, that's just the history, and I would never rule that out of order to talk about, the history of the 2012 situation and trying to make a determination of 2013, but you can't obviously take any action regarding the 2012. It's not agenda sized.
So perhaps that the 2012 audit issue can be put on a future agenda, and we still need to select an auditor for 2013 regardless. That will need to be done at some point soon. So is anybody prepared to accept either of the proposals from either Johnson Block or Baker and Tilly?
I mean, I get invited by other board members to comment, be anxious to hear from them. For me, I am not really inclined to vote to retain either one of them tonight, and it has nothing to do with either one of those firms, but it's simply my belief that we need to get on and get about the 2012 audit and financials before we take this step.
Attorney Macy, at what point is it incumbent upon us to have an auditor retained and begin working on an audit? Is there a time frame in the statutes?
I will check. I don't know off the top of my head. I did check previously for this issue on the, you are obligated to present a financial summary of the financial condition of the community at the annual meeting. But I do not, I believe it's because it's a separate section that says, it doesn't say in that section you have to provide an audit, because many towns aren't required to have an audit. And so you're going to have to present some financial condition of the community at the annual meeting. You are all shaking your head, so you're aware of that. And then it'll take a second to find the section that says you're required because you have a combined clerk treasurer. I don't know off the top of my head. It'll take a few minutes to try to find that section. It's like one of yourselves knows it off the top of your head. I will.
Making the assumption that we haven't retained a firm to conduct a 2013 audit, or that after we retain them, they simply haven't had time to do it, then we would simply, at the annual meeting, present a summary that is an unaudited summary.
Correct. I don't think there's anything in the statute that says what has to all be in the report to the community at the annual meeting. It just says that, you know, you have to make a report of the financial condition. Okay, well, it says combine the office of the town clerk and town treasurer. If the offices are combined, the town board shall provide for an annual audit under 6043 sub 2. So now we go to 6043 sub 2. Audit of the combined clerk and treasurer's offices. If the offices of the town clerk and the town treasurer are combined under 63051A, which I just read, the town board shall arrange for an audit of the town financial records at least once every year. The audit may be conducted either by a certified public accountant appointed by the town board and not otherwise employed by the town, or by the Department of Revenue if the Department provides such a service. So that's the sections that apply, which it appears that it is. There is no time. It just says, you know, once a year, at least once a year, you have to have an audit. I can go back and look for the other one if you want as to the wording on the financial condition at the annual meeting, but I'm pretty sure on that one. I can move that one.
Question.
Yes, Mr. Laska?
Question for Mr. Macy. Mr. Macy, is it mandatory that the town chair sign off on a audit, or can any of the supervisors sign off on this particular audit?
I don't have an answer to that question. That's a question probably the auditor would have to ask, or I'd have to do some research. I've never been asked that question. I guess it's always been a question in my mind. If I'm a newly elected official and I had nothing to do with that year's finances, I don't know how you would ever get a new town chairman to sign off on some other predecessor's financial condition. They weren't here. So I don't know how the auditor gets around this issue ever. So that's a question we need to ask an auditor about how they deal. And I mean, I could research it, but I would think that the auditor would know the answer of how he gets somebody to sign it. So I apologize, that's the best answer I can give you. I don't know the answer to that, but when I heard of this issue, I sort of questioned in my mind, if I got elected in April, and this was the audit for the prior year, and I wasn't on the board, and even if I was on the board and I wasn't the chairman, why would I sign it? You have no personal knowledge of what they're asking you to sign, I guess, from what the certificate says.
You're not actually signing off on the audit. What you're signing is a representation letter, and the representation letter contains exactly what it says, representations. For instance, that there were, that the town would have complied with all of the state, local rules regarding, and specifically the state budget amendments. And that's something that I simply wasn't going to sign because the town of Waukesha did not comply with the state statutes or the town ordinances regarding budget amendments in the previous 3 budget cycles.
So it well may be that it'll never have that representation, and we'll just have to go forward. I don't know, but again, maybe the 2013 auditor will say what credence or what they can do about the 2012. Because they're going to have to look at the 2012, obviously, and make certain representations based on the 2012. And certain, comments, or comments is usually what they call it, I think. They would comment on the information they received.
So is there a motion to select an auditor for the 2013 financials?
Did you make a motion, Brian, or was that just a comment?
Mine was just a comment.
Oh, okay. I'll move that we put this off until next meeting.
So you want to table this until?
Table it until first meeting of February.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion.
Mr. Laska, that's the second.
Mr. Laska?
Again, I guess to understand that the auditor would be better equipped to make a decision how to go forward with the 2012 just is not registering. I'm looking for a legal opinion And virtually, I would ask Mr. Macy to research that and get back to the board on this so we can resolve this issue.
Research what, Mike? I'm not sure I understood your question.
Whatever the state statutes indicate about who can sign off on a particular audit for a particular year, you cited the example where someone who came aboard in April had nothing to do with the previous year. Makes sense. So therefore, how can we follow state statutes, our ordinances, or whatever legal device to make and correct and to go forward with the 2012 audit?
When you say sign off on the audit, Mike, are you saying sign the representation letter that represents that the town followed all of the state statutes and local ordinances?
What I am asking is to proceed with the 2012 audit. How can we proceed in that manner? That's what I'm asking Mr. Macy to research and get back to the board on.
You said sign off, Mike. I'm not trying to belabor it. I'm just asking, when you say sign off, are you talking about signing the representation letter that states that the town followed all of the state statutes and local ordinances?
Whatever will give us the information to go forward so the 2013 auditor has numbers to work off of. That's what I want to know.
Okay, so are you wanting to sign the representation letter?
I want to go forward with this, and I did not get an answer that I'm comfortable with from Mr. Macy.
Supervisor, and I certainly am not trying not to answer your question, I'm just staying out of the discussion. I would be more than happy to research that for you. I'm not sure that that's the best use of the dollars, but I certainly will do it. Because you might be able to get that answer for free by inviting in the two candidates, having them look at what the 2012 says, asking them what they can do or can't do with that 2012, and what they might suggest be done. It might answer more than the question of who can sign the representation letter. Because if I answer who can sign the representation letter, but none of you are willing to sign it, we've gotten nowhere. Then we still have a 2012 audit that no one's signing the representation letter because no one feels comfortable or doesn't want the responsibility. You understand what I mean? So the worst case is no one signs the representation letter. What will this new auditor do with that information? And the only way we can do that is to call them in and ask them. They should know what the situation is for 2012 and be prepared to accept that situation if they're retained, it seems to me, and then they can tell you what they're going to do or not going to do based on that information, and we can move ahead then. They both may say, we don't want the job because the representation letter isn't signed. They both could say, we proceed with the data and we just note that there was no representation letter. I know many of you in your mind want to know, I believe from my little bit of information, that you want to know what the effect is that their representation letter hasn't been signed. An auditor, I think, can tell you better than a lawyer who doesn't have an auditing degree. But again, don't get me wrong, Supervisor, I will research whatever you tell me to research, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to call an auditor and ask him the answer to that question before I go to the law books.
Mr. Bansky?
On October 23rd, Catherine Schweigel, partner with Clifton Larson Allen, sent an email to the town of Waukesha chairman. John, Chaz McElroy updated me on your recent discussion and asked me to follow up with you on our conclusions. Due to not having a signed management representation letter from you, we are required under professional standards to issue a disclaimer of opinion. Renee will continue to complete the steps to issue the 2012 audit and the required communications in their final form. CLA, short for Clifton Larson Allen, will complete our obligations for the 2012 audit, but we will not continue as auditors for the town of Waukesha beyond that. Sean Walker and I would be willing to meet with another board member and yourself if desired to discuss the 2012 audit. In a second email, which came from John Schutkin, who is the general counsel for Clifton Larson Allen. Dear Ms. Salentine, your November 7th request for Renee Messing to attend the Town of Waukesha meeting has been referred to my attention. First, please be advised, Clifton Larson Allen LLP has now completed all services for the town. It has no outstanding engagements and no continuing professional relationship with the town. I won't bore you with the rest of the thing. They have issued a final, concluded audit. It is an unqualified audit because they lack the ability from professional standards to issue a qualified opinion because the management representation letter has not been signed. It is that simple. The rest of this is circus BS, and Sarah, you can quote me. Circus. The audit is done, and it's been done. And there was no funny business with it. The only funny business is the management letter wouldn't be signed. We came into the office when Angie and I were first elected, and we also, Attorney Macy, had a challenge with signing off of a management letter from previous board members' work because we were not here to oversee that. And we found a way to provide a document through our legal team to get something completed and done. The same decision was issued back then, an unqualified opinion, because we could not state without clarity that the previous board had acted in an appropriate fashion by following the law, as you have pointed out. But that is the only thing left to do on the audit. So if the board members want to go down the path of hiring another accounting firm to come in and do a site audit and spend $20,000, $25,000 to do the same work that is already done, and residents can pick a copy up of it, and I guess you can do it, but I won't.
They did not provide an unqualified opinion. They provided no opinion on the financial condition of the town of Waukesha. Read the audit. We are not providing an opinion on the financial condition of the town of Waukesha.
Okay, that is the issue that needs to get resolved. We obviously have a difference of opinion. I think we have to move back to the 2013.
I don't think it's an opinion. I just read word for
I
word
understand.
what the senior partner of that firm said. This isn't an opinion. This isn't some misrepresentation of words, as John will accuse me in
Read the
another
audit.
meeting of doing. This is a factual document. You can go ahead and file an open records request for the email. It's there. That's what the woman said. She invited
Wait,
you to have a
I'm going to
meeting.
tell the board that we're back on the 2013 audit issue. There's no new information on the history that seems to be material. If you have new information on trying to make a decision on 2013 and 2012, you could present it. I've given you a great deal of leeway under the law to talk about the 2012, but if there's nothing new about 2012, I would suggest you move to the 2013.
There's a motion, Mr. Chairman, there's a motion on the table to basically take this issue and move it ahead to the next meeting. There should not have even been any of this discussion for the last 15 minutes. I call the question.
Did we get a second? I apologize because I didn't write down a second, so that's why the discussion started.
Mike seconded.
Yeah, so did he?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All in favor? Opposed?